Fourth week of pretenders, contenders, dumpster fires, and sleepers. This week's the SEC. The SEC knows all. It's just means more down in the SEC. That's what they say.
That's what they say.
It just means more. We'll get into our contenders, sleepers, and dumpster fires. But first things first. We could talk about Michigan imposing a 2-game suspension for Sherrone Moore. But first, we got to talk about a team that's not going to be playing in the postseason this year.
Oof. Honestly,
we've got to talk about this.
This is a huge loss for all of us. I don't know what we're going to do. The playoffs and the postseason are just going to zip by because we're not going to be able to watch them.
We could talk about it, and we could talk about Sherrone Moore's suspension. But no, Akron will not be playing in the postseason this year. It's unfortunate. Adjust your brackets. I already know people were putting Akron into the 12-team playoff. We thought they'd be a G5, maybe even get a bye. But unfortunately, their average APR over 4 years did not meet 930. So APR is based on graduation rate. 930 means 50% of their players are graduating. Akron's was 914 on their 4-year average. That is not good.
Turns out you still needed to go to school and do well.
What was Akron's
record last year? Like, was it like they were?
Akron hasn't made a bowl game since 2017. I'll be honest. They were 4-8. They were 4-8. They did beat Toledo somehow. I don't know how. Toledo was actually pretty good last year, and they beat Toledo in overtime. They also beat Colgate, Kent State, and Eastern Michigan. But, I mean, who didn't beat Kent State? Kent State didn't have a lead in a game until the final game of the year. In reality, they weren't going to be in the postseason anyways. I don't know who they added, but there was no chance that they were going to be in the postseason.
Right.
It is just kind of funny. This is the first time in a decade that a team's APR has been the reason that they are not going to be allowed in the postseason. The last one was Idaho, who dropped to FCS at this point. Could we see Akron going to FCS?
Could be. I mean, if you haven't made a bowl game in 2017, what money are you bringing in? So a school like Akron, if you're not bringing in money as a football program, what's going to happen?
They're not graduating players.
Yeah. That's this is
the funniest part of this whole thing, all the penalties, is the fact that they take away practice time, and the reason is that because they say we want you to practice less and hit the books harder.
Yeah, and the last thing they needed taken away from a 4-8 team is practice time.
So whatever Akron's over-under is, I would go ahead and take the under for that this year. It just doesn't seem likely that they're going to win many games.
Why was this put into place after the transfer portal?
I wonder if it has something to do because we just hit graduation.
Oh, yeah.
That's my only guess.
The semester would have ended. Yeah, this makes sense.
That would be my only guess, is that we are right now, graduation season. We had just finished for the semester. So my guess is that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
But I'm only speculating. I actually have no idea if that's the reason or not.
What they should do is what Michigan did, and that's say, listen, I know I'm about to get in trouble. I will not coach against Central Michigan, and I will not coach against Nebraska. You have my word, NCAA. I know we cheated to win the national championship, and I know we did a lot of wrong things, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to do the right thing. And I, Sherrone Moore, even though all these things happen and I'm very, 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 very involved, I'll just remove myself from Central Michigan and Nebraska.
There's two things that make this so funny. One, that it's Central Michigan, because it's kind of where a lot of this started with Connor Stallions supposedly being on the sidelines for Central Michigan. So
supposedly. Supposedly.
Hey, he never confirmed that, even though that is Connor Stallions.
Yeah, I love how speaking of that, I love how he's on like this like book tour. And like coming out of silence, and like now we're supposed to believe all this bull crap he's saying about all these other teams. I'm like, dude, you have been lying and full of shit for the last couple of years. Why would we start believing you now? You wrote a manifesto.
Why would he be incentivized to tell any bit of the truth?
Yeah, exactly. But you can't trust anybody who writes a manifesto. If anybody writes a manifesto, Like, you can't take them seriously because they're either going to do countless murders or they're Connor Stallions and they're it's going to do
If
whatever.
he came out and said, "Yeah, I spent $20,000 on game tickets so that way my friends could film the game and film the signals on their iPhone," he wouldn't be getting a book tour. He wouldn't be getting all that.
Right.
It's not necessarily the fact that he's playing, woe is me and playing, trying to get sympathy, but also he is trying to stay in good graces. And I mean, I think eventually he's going to end up on a Barstool Sports or something like that because he's going to try to stay relevant. This shtick only lasts so long.
Right. Well, and like, go ahead.
And when this investigation's all over and after this season and like everything is wrapped up, because now, Sherrone Moore, the whole Michigan NCAA hearing is in June. So all of the penalties will be over by this fall, especially after Sherrone Moore's suspension. What are we going to have to talk about with Connor Stallions? He already got Bryce Underwood to go to Michigan.
Well, and think about this too. You have to know or think that Sherrone Moore knows something's coming because number one, just earlier this week, the president of the athletics program, whatever, I forget what his
the president of university. It was the president of the university, which they said was unrelated, but still awkward timing.
And then Sherrone Moore turns around and suspends himself for 2 meaningless games. So it's like, what are we doing? Like, do you really think they're going to take
an interesting one without Sherrone Moore? I will say that it's at Nebraska. Year 2 of Dylan Raiola.
But I don't know. You pick 2 random games. You're purposely not missing who's the SEC team they're playing.
Oklahoma. They're the Oklahoma week 2, and they're phrasing it as Sherrone Moore's alma mater. He doesn't want to miss that. Give me a break.
Well, you know what? You really want to prove a point and actually get them to take you seriously when they when you go to the appeal and go to this hearing. How about do one that actually has some sort of ripple effect along with it instead of just freaking suspending yourself for Central Michigan would probably make the board laugh at you. Like, I don't think this is going to be taken into account at all when they're doing the final hearing. I don't think it will.
Yeah, I have no idea what the penalties are going to come out to be, and I'm not even going to try to speculate. I just think it's hilarious the fact that he said we're going to suspend ourselves for game 3 and 4, not game 1 and 2, which would make sense.
Right. Who's game 2?
Well, game 1 is New Mexico, and game 2 is Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I'm almost surprised they didn't say we're going to suspend him for game 1 and game 3, but you get to coach for Oklahoma.
Right.
I'll be interested to see a couple weeks from now. The hearing is on June 6th and 7th. I'm guessing we're not going to get anything immediately. I think by the middle of the summer, we'll have an idea. I'm almost surprised that Michigan has not self-imposed a bowl ban, but I'm also thinking that they might wait until the last possible second if that's what they decide to do. They should have imposed a bowl ban last year. There was no reason to go play that bowl game.
I'm kind of glad they didn't, though. That was nice seeing them beat Alabama.
It was funny. It was funny watching them run some no-name quarterbacks out there and winning the game.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But I thought they should have just imposed it last year. But I'm wondering if they thought that they would not get into that situation. But I was talking with a reporter the other day who we know fairly well. And one thing we were talking about was his belief was that Sherrone Moore would get a suspension. And then he thinks the rest is going to be
taking the games away, taking around.
Not even that. It's just, like Jesse Minter is going to get, a 3-year show cause, and Jim Harbaugh is going to get added on to his show cause. It's just going to be for optics. It's not going to actually be anything substantial because a lot of people aren't there anymore.
They've dragged it out this long. And they've caused so many people that don't even have anything to do with it to buy into it. I mean,
yeah,
you've made it more of a public hearing than you had to. And now, like, no matter what you do, if Michigan doesn't get dragged across the coals, everybody's gonna be pissed.
Yeah, it's gonna be like the Houston Astros in baseball, where they come out and they really aren't sorry because like they won it all. Same thing, like Michigan, like they're gonna be like, well, we're not really sorry. We won a national championship and we got to keep it, so it's not gonna really happen. But same thing, like it's also hard to punish the players that are there. You don't want to come out and be like, yeah, it's a 2-year bowl ban for guys that like, hey,
Yeah.
Most of these guys weren't even there at that point.
I hate bowl bans and I hate scholarship reductions because it's not the players' fault. The players weren't involved in Sherrone Moore and Jesse Minter and Connor Stallions and Jim Harbaugh doing all this stuff behind the scenes. That's not their fault. And it's bullcrap that a lot of times they do get in trouble. I will be happy if they don't get anything. If the current players don't get in trouble, but it's hard to think they won't.
A personal opinion of mine, I think pooling wins and is dumb. I think that revoking wins is stupid because everybody knows the game happened. Everybody saw it happen on the field, especially like if you were to go and I don't think they will, but revoke their national championship. It's like, how? Like, what are you going to like? You took back a trophy, but like, what are you going to do? Go to every player and be like, I need your ring back now too.
Yeah,
like
take that tattoo off.
I need all that memorabilia. I need all that merch. It needs to be gone. We all got to burn it. Like, no, it all still happened. The only thing is it just gets a line through it in a record book. If you ever go to like USC stuff, it says in like an asterisk actually vacated. Like, you know, it happened.
Right.
It happened. We all saw it happen. It just gets an asterisk next to it says vacated. And to me, I think that's just stupid. I think that's a waste.
Yeah.
I think it's just a waste. Anyways, speaking of things that are not a waste, is we have a new rivalry in college football.
We do.
New
the
rivalry.
Cattle battle.
Is that what we're going with here?
I like the cattle battle. The Protestants versus the Catholics, the Baptists versus the Catholics, the Leprechauns versus the Farmer Johns. We got Clemson and Notre Dame for the next 12 years, starting in 2027. I think this is, well, let's be honest. This comes from money. Notre Dame doesn't need money, but they I mean, whatever, to get into the playoffs, they need non-conference wins, which all their wins are non-conference, but that's neither here nor there.
They need some substantial wins, and unfortunately, the ACC has not really been holding up their end of the bargain in part of their 5-game because the ACC, other than a couple teams, tends to be average at best.
Yeah.
Yes.
But with the ACC's shift to going from revenue sharing, where they were saying, all right, if the ACC makes $500 million, all the schools get an equal share of the $500 million, to now it's, hey, whatever you bring in terms of eyes, views, whatever your ratings are, that's the money you get. So Clemson's like, let's go, bring on the money. We're about to be playing Notre Dame, who pays for themselves, and then all the eyes will be on that. Plus, it's been great football. I mean, the last few games, there's been 2 blowouts in Notre Dame Clemson. That was the Cotton Bowl when Trevor Lawrence and Justin Ross and T. Higgins just put a whooping on them. And then DJ Uiagalelei coming in. DJ Uiagalelei's sophomore year when they just laid it on them in South Bend. Meaning Notre Dame laid it on them. Couldn't stop the run. I think Audric Estime was the running back then. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. They're not calling it a rivalry, though. They're calling it a partnership. Let's get out.
It's funny, but like Notre Dame played against Michigan for like 30 straight years or whatever it was, 40 straight years, and it became a rivalry. And if you're going to play somebody like this on a yearly basis for 12 straight years, even if it's not actually a rivalry, it's going to develop into something, especially if the games are competitive. You've got Dabo versus Marcus Freeman for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know if they'll both be there in 15 years from now, but
Dabo better be.
Dabo might retire by then.
No,
and Marcus Freeman could get poached by somewhere else. But still, if you got Dabo versus Marcus Freeman for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you've got you're going to have some really good games in there. I just pulled up Clemson's future schedule. In 2030, though, it is an absolute bloodbath of a non-conference.
Yeah, you've got Georgia, you've got Notre Dame, you've got South Carolina, and you've got...
they don't have anybody else there, but that doesn't matter. Whoever they don't have there, just go schedule the Citadel. Nobody cares. If you're playing those 3 as your non-conference, you get a pass for whoever else you want to play.
Hey, Dabo loves a tough non-conference schedule. I mean, you're playing playoff games. You know where you stand. I just got to go in the ACC.
I also love this for Clemson because the fact is that I want teams to be rewarded for playing a tough schedule. Like if you lose 1 or 2 games, but you lose to Georgia and you lose to, let's say whoever the top ACC team, SMU or something like that, but you beat South Carolina and Notre Dame and they're perennial top 15 teams. I want you to be rewarded for that. I don't want you to go 11-1 like Indiana did and like didn't play anybody really tough in the non-conference. I would much rather you play a very difficult non-conference schedule and then all of a sudden get rewarded for that.
So you would rather you be Ohio State than you'd be Indiana, where Ohio State plays a tough schedule. They drop a couple. No, they drop a couple. They dropped Oregon and dropped Michigan, and then but still get in because you played Oregon, because you played Penn State, because you played
Indiana.
Yeah. So you played a tougher schedule. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I was trying to kind of make a joke at you, but
as a fan though, I would much rather watch these games than watch Clemson play against Middle Tennessee State or something like that.
Right.
I'd much rather be able to watch, a Saturday night with Notre Dame and Clemson and Death Valley or, up in South Bend.
Well, and like a lot of schools too, like these SEC schools who are like, we play so many hard, blah, 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 blah. You know what this does when you play tough teams, when you play good teams, when you play recognizable teams? It brings eyes. Eyes recruits 10 years from now. Because when little William was watching TV and he sees Vince Young score a touchdown in the Rose Bowl against USC. Now I know this is national championships, so it's a little bit different, but when I'm watching that, I became a Texas fan because I loved watching. Now I didn't pull for them, but like I wasn't a fan of them, like my primary team, but I would pull for Texas. I wanted Texas to be good because I loved watching Vince Young. I loved watching all that stuff. You're recruiting.
If you were a recruit and you weren't getting offered by Clemson, but Texas was coming hard for you, those memories would be jogging in your head, being like, I remember Vince Young scoring and winning a national championship.
That needs to be put on a card. If you're not getting recruited by Clemson and Texas is coming hard for you, that's where you go. I need that. I need that with a caption on it. No, but seriously, like that. So like when Clemson plays Notre Dame, all right, now there's kids from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana. The whole Midwest is going to be watching that because they have a vested interest in Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a national brand. So you've got people from all over the country that are now watching Clemson. And then if you go on a visit for this game and you're playing a big game, that's a big environment. It's exciting. It's fun. That sells people. I mean, if you go to an exciting, close, good football game, you fall in love with the environment. You fall in love with the team. Like that's what gets you. So it's genius in terms of preparing the player for the rest of the season. And it's good for fanatics, getting money, getting revenue, and it's good for recruiting. So I don't know why more teams don't do it. And then, you hear the freaking Alabamas of the world complain about their schedule all the time. Woe is me. I had to play Kent State in freaking November. Who cares? Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, for the fans as well. I mean, people that want to go to games, like I don't enjoy going to Ohio State versus Western Michigan.
Me neither.
I don't enjoy going and watching a game where the spread is 28.5 points. And it's not a matter of if Ohio State wins, it's by how much they win.
Wait a minute, Jake. We went to the Ohio State-Nebraska game and the spread was 26.5.
Was it really?
Well, I think it was in the 20s.
Yeah, I believe that. And then they needed an interception to seal the game.
Sometimes you get a good game out of that, but that's also Nebraska. It's not Central Michigan.
It's a little bit different when it's conference game, and things can get a little weird in conference games. But
and Dylan Raiola, aka Patrick Mahomes Jr., is out there.
Yeah.
Watch out for him.
But in general, I know as fans, when you look at the future schedules and you go, okay, hey, this year we've got Georgia and Notre Dame coming to us, like that gets you a little pumped up, being like, whew, this is going to be a fun year.
Yeah.
Especially depending on who else might be coming in conference. If you get a Florida State, if you get a couple of Miami, if you get some of these other big names, or if there's, whoever the top ACC teams are in 8 years, it makes it way more fun as a fan.
And you know what else? Clemson goes to South Bend. South Bend hosts their recruits for that week. If there's anybody we're battling and Clemson goes in and thumps them, you might sway some of their guys to come to you. I mean,
there was an Ohio State
matter.
One time that they played against Indiana. I remember this very vividly. Samson James. Ohio State was playing against Indiana. This kid was from Indiana. Ohio State beats Indiana by a decent margin. And Samson James then flips to Indiana. He goes, you know what? I watched that, and they could use my help.
Well, there's a guy from Sumter who went to my high school, Presley Harvin, and was the number one punter in the country. And Clemson wanted to get him, and he was a big Clemson fan, but he wouldn't go to Clemson because they don't punt enough. So he went to Georgia Tech.
That kind of makes sense as punters, though, because you need film. And if you're not going to punt, like, what are you doing? Anyways, last thing before we jump into our SEC. Article came out about Jim Knowles and his move to Penn State. I don't know if you got a chance to read this at all.
I have not. This ought to be good, though.
So Jim Knowles, there's a whole article, and I'm just going to basically go over the cliff notes. So basically, he was interviewed by, I think it was Heather Dinich. ESPN did the interview, and there was a talk about why he made the move. And he said that basically he was looking for a contract extension before the national championship game and was upset that it hadn't been, offered. So after the game 2 days later, still nothing was still finalized. So he called Penn State, called James Franklin, I think he said 5:00 in the morning, said he was interested in the opening. So then James Franklin moved on it. And then he was upset when Ohio State told him not to go to the celebration, even though the celebration ended at like 1 and like 1:04, it was announced that James Franklin was going to Penn State.
Jim Knowles. But there's no way that's not true.
He was rumored to be involved in Oklahoma, like when Ohio State was playing the Texas game. Like there was a lot of rumors that Oklahoma was involved for Jim Knowles at that point.
He didn't get along with Larry Johnson. So you can say this lie that they didn't extend you. Bullcrap. I'm pretty sure you already had an extension in place.
He signed an extension in January 2024 for 3 years. So it's not like his contract was expiring. So he still had 2 years left on his deal.
So bullcrap, you probably asked for some ungodly number for some ungodly amount of years to pretty much say, I am not coming back unless you give me this. And you're not gonna bring me back. I'm not gonna come back. You didn't like Larry Johnson. You won a national championship. You didn't want to be there anyway, so you left. Let's not play that game. You know what? But you know what? This is gonna be great for Ohio State. All the Ohio State guys out there now, you're gonna be happy because there's gonna be bulletin board when you go play Penn State. So he's already given them bulletin board material before the freaking season kicks off. So this is exciting me already.
I guess I just don't understand the whole point of the interview. I understand there's a question of like, oh, why did you leave Ohio State? You just won a national championship. You went to Penn State. There was a very easy way for him to say, like, I grew up as a Penn State fan.
Right.
I grew up in Philadelphia. The opportunity was there. I won a national championship. I'm happy. I wanted to go coach at a dream spot. I accomplished what I wanted to. I want to go coach at my dream spot. Instead, it comes out like this, and it's just it's kind of hairy, and it just feels kind of weird. And, it seems like that there was a little bit sour grapes on his part too. He didn't seem, you don't do this interview if you're happy with how things ended.
Right. So that was just to get over it. You're with the new girl. Yeah. You don't have to talk about your ex-girlfriend anymore.
Yeah, he's still talking about his ex while he's with his new girlfriend. He's complaining about his ex-girlfriend to his current girlfriend.
To another girl.
Yeah.
At a dinner.
Yeah. To another girl. Just a weird situation. We'll see what happens. And I mean, Penn State got a really, really good defensive coordinator. They had a really good defensive coordinator. It's not like Penn State has struggled with defense lately. So
defense has never been the issue.
It's the main thing of can Drew Aller get over the hump this year?
Yeah.
Anyways, speaking of getting over the hump, let's talk about pretenders, contenders, sleepers, and dumpster fires for the SEC for this year. The conference that is considered the best in college football. And let's get started. We both have a bunch more contenders. We both labeled out a bunch of contenders for the SEC, mainly because there's a lot of questions in this conference because basically all the contenders, all the top teams are breaking in new quarterbacks this year. Georgia, Carson Beck is gone. Alabama, Jalen Milroe is gone. Texas, Quinn Ewers is gone. Those are the three main ones. The top returning quarterback is probably Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, Nico Iamaleava is gone. A lot of the quarterbacks at the top programs are out.
Yeah, Nussmeier
Lenore Sellers.
Lenore
Sellers and Garrett Nussmeier are probably your two best quarterback comeback. And then you've got DJ Lagway still, which we didn't get to see a ton of him. We got to see him enough for him to get a little bit of flash. I'll be interested to see what he does in a first full season this year. But let's go through the contenders. I think a couple of them are pretty obvious here. So let's start going through a couple of them. You want to go first?
You want me to go first? So Georgia,
go ahead,
I think everyone's going to have Georgia as a contender in this conference. I mean, I'm not sold on Gunnar Stockton. I did not like the way he looked against Notre Dame. I did not think he looked capable. And he had a good amount of time to prepare. They knew he was going to be the starter. He had time to prepare, and he looked bad against Notre Dame. Now, pair that with Georgia had the 102nd ranked, I think it was 102nd ranked rushing offense, and they had the most drops in the country from their wide receiver position. So that's not going to help any quarterback. So, but
they bring in Zachariah Branch though.
They bring in Zachariah Branch. They already have Nate Frazier. So they're already deep, and they have a good stable of running backs. They always have. They always will. Their offense line will always be good. They bring in Zachariah Branch, who's a pure playmaker. I mean, the dude is phenomenal. So if Gunnar Stockton is going to be good, we're going to see it this year. I also like their defense is going to be phenomenal. Their defense is always phenomenal. It's going to be phenomenal. So if you get in those games and you need to, you're not going to have to ask Gunnar Stockton to do too much. So in a couple of games, he's going to maybe have to step up and do some things that you normally wouldn't ask him to do. That's why I think they can still be a contender, because you don't have to rely on Gunnar Stockton. You have other things you can do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Georgia is, I would consider them, I would personally probably consider them the favorite. I mean, they're the reigning SEC champs. I know that, yeah, Gunnar Stockton, is not he's not flashy by any means. He's not going to come in and light it up, and you're not expecting him to win a Heisman. But there's enough talent on both sides of the ball here that there's no reason that Georgia should not be sitting there at 10 or 11 wins come the end of the season.
Right.
So what you said, same thing. Their offensive line, they're just big dudes. They just bring some big Southern boys that down there and just let them move mountains. Running game's going to be fine. Zachariah Branch should be a little bit of a jump start to that, but the defense is just going to be fine. They're going to be good. Yeah, they probably got a couple first-round picks on them still. They'll be fine.
Colby Young's there for his second year out of Miami. I'm liking that. Drew Bobo, the offensive coordinator, is the starting center. The offensive coordinator's son, excuse me. But Oscar Delp comes back. That's also a great sign for a young first-year starting quarterback. I guess he's not young. He's a redshirt junior. But you got Oscar Delp coming in. Yeah, they're going to be deep. They're going to be fine. This is going to be a really, really good football team like they normally are.
Also on defense, you get Zachariah's brother Zion, who had plenty of experience playing safety. You're putting him in Georgia's defense, I'm sure he'll be better than whatever he was over at USC. Yeah. And they have recruited so well on the defensive side of the ball. Right. So well.
My only issue with Georgia is when they go to play at Texas, who's actually my favorite to win the SEC. When they go to play at Texas and you're even defensively, right? And you're even at the skill positions and you're even in the trenches, and then it comes down to quarterback play. Who would you rather have lead your team in the fourth quarter, Arch Manning or Gunnar Stockton? Neither one of them.
I have no idea.
Exactly. Neither one of them have proven anything. So I'm making a prediction based off of what I think Arch Manning will be and what I think Gunnar Stockton will be. They didn't change a lot in that Georgia wide receiver room. They brought in Zachariah Branch. Dylan Bell is still there. Dylan Bell has struggled a lot.
But Arian Smith is gone. Who dropped a lot of passes.
Yes, he did. So that he was one of the
How did
key
he
offenders.
Get drafted? Just because he's fast?
Yes, absolutely. It's because he's fast. Put him back.
He can't catch anything. He couldn't catch a cold.
No, so that's foolish. That's like sometimes I hear that and I'm like, how the heck how did Xavier Restrepo not get drafted, but Arian Smith did? Yeah. Makes no sense to me. But anyway, Texas is the second team I would like to talk about, and I think you have Texas as well. But Texas is bringing back both their starting running backs. I mean, they lost Jaden Blue, but they got Quintravian Wisner, C.J. Baxter, who are phenomenal running backs. You have Arch Manning.
Baxter was out all of last year. He missed all last year because he got injured right in August.
Yeah, it was right before the season started. You're right. It was during fall camp. Tore his ACL. Arch Manning he brings a method to the offense that Quinn Ewers didn't have, and that's the running ability. And we saw they would bring packages in for Arch Manning just to run the football. Jordan Washington, I think, is a phenomenal tight end. I love Ryan Wingo. Don't care about the rest of the wide receiver room. You got Ryan Wingo. You've got your guy. You've got your war daddy. Their offensive line's huge. I'm pretty sure I heard that their defensive line averages 300 pounds across the line. It's going to be hard to run the football on guys like that. So Texas,
Yeah, and you've got a guy like Colin Simmons on the defensive end. He was a stud as a freshman last year.
Yeah, Anthony Hill Jr.
Yeah, losing a guy like Jaden Blue does hurt, but having Wisner and bringing back CJ Baxter is definitely good. I think Arch Manning, he started a couple of games last year. That's huge rather than him coming in fresh and basically never playing, especially when their first game is on the road at Ohio State this year. I do have some concern. I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit of concern. You lost Cameron Williams and you lose Kelvin Banks, both your offensive tackles, especially for a new quarterback breaking in 2 new offensive tackles. Gunnar Helm was a very reliable tight end, so you lose that. Obviously, Matthew Golden was phenomenal. He's a first-round pick. Jahdae Barron, your Thorpe Award winner, and there's 3 defensive linemen that were drafted this past year, so you're replacing all of them. Andrew Makuba was starting safety. There's a lot of experience that's there, but there's a lot of talent on this team.
So they still have Malik Muhammad. They still have Michael Taff, who are both phenomenal pieces in that secondary. Like you said, they have Colin Simmons. They got Anthony Hill Jr., who's a phenomenal middle linebacker. I think he'll probably come out this year. I'm more sure about this roster than I am about Georgia's roster, which sounds weird to say, but I trust this roster more than I do Georgia.
I think there's a higher ceiling and also a lower floor with Texas.
Yeah.
I think Georgia, we kind of know what we're going to get. I think Texas, there's a lot of variables here of this guy should be good. This guy should be this. Like, how does CJ Baxter come back? He just tore his ACL. How is he going to run this year?
But you have, in that scenario, and sorry to cut you off, but in that scenario, you have a Quintravion Wisner.
I know. You have a Wisner.
Himself, so you don't have to rely on CJ Baxter.
No. You want depth at the running back position. I mean, they ran Wisner and Blue throughout most of the year last year. So having depth, is CJ Baxter going to be a deep drop off, or is he going to be, right there in step with Wisner?
Right.
At offensive tackle, how are those guys? I mean, Kelvin Banks was at the 5-star start as a true freshman, was one of the best offensive linemen in the last 3 seasons. How do you replace that? Arch Manning, we saw him, but we only saw him against Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State, both teams that are not phenomenal by any means. Yeah. How is he going to play? Obviously Ohio State, but I'm going to kind of discount that because it's the first game of the year. But how is he going to play against Georgia? How is he going to play against Texas A&M? How is he going to play against these other top level SEC teams?
I will say Trevor Gooseby came in because I think Banks was hurt when Clemson played them in the in the playoffs, and Gooseby looked really good. So for what it's worth, and he's blocking TJ Parker, and don't worry about the other side back then, but TJ Parker was a phenomenal edge rusher, and TJ Gooseby held his own. So I mean, I don't know.
I also really like Alabama this year. I think this is a year where you could see a little bit of a pretty large improvement for Alabama, because I think this could start looking like a little more like 2023 Washington. Jalen Milroe, we know, had limitations throwing the ball. Yeah, he was strong, but the accuracy was not there, inconsistent with decision making. Ty Simpson is expected to step in and be the quarterback this year, and you have Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams as your wide receivers. You have experience.
Did you know Ryan Williams was 17 years old last year when he played?
Do you know he's going to be an 18-year-old sophomore?
Mm-hmm. Think about that.
He's only going to be an 18-year-old sophomore.
Think about
that.
Yeah.
It's wild. But I think you're going to see a little bit more similar to that 2023 Washington. I don't think it's going to look exactly like that 2023 Washington team had absolute studs at wide receiver.
Well, speaking of 2023 Washington, they have Ryan Grubbs back at offensive coordinator.
They do.
So
they brought in Ryan.
Got his guy back.
He got his guy back, and coincidentally, I forget who the backup is, but they also brought him over from Washington as well. And they also have Keelan Russell, who for some reason Ty Simpson isn't. Keelan Russell was the number 1 quarterback in the class last year. They could possibly step him in. But you got Caden Proctor there at left tackle. You got Jam Miller and Richard Young at running back. You've got plenty of guys, and they also ran a bunch of young guys out on defense last year, like Xavier Brown. So I think that Alabama, I feel weird saying this, but Alabama is a contender, but they're kind of being slept on a little bit.
Yeah. When's the last time we've had to say that? We've been able to say that Alabama's being slept on.
Because You don't.
Holy crap, Jake. Sorry, you want to feel old?
Yeah.
You know who plays safety for Alabama? Dre Kirkpatrick Jr.
Oh, geez.
Do you remember Dre
Yes.
Kirkpatrick from like 10 years ago?
Yeah, he got drafted
by the Bengals. Yeah.
And it was like 07.
That's freaking insane. Sorry, that just
Alabama's got tons of talent on defense that you don't even remember. Like Damani Jackson, who was a 5-star, came over from USC, should start at cornerback. Cam Calhoun, who was at Utah last year, should also get a lot of play. There's so many guys on this team. Like LT Overton is supposed to be a first-round pick next year. Will probably be a cog in the middle of that defensive line. There's a lot of guys here. And Alabama seems to be pretty good with bringing in transfers. They bring in the right guys. They don't just really – it's not like some of the other programs are bringing 25, 30 transfers.
And I have Alabama listed as a contender as well, but I have one thing that I need to say, like one precaution. One precaution is the entire season lies on the shoulders of Ty Simpson.
Didn't it rely on Jalen Milroe last year?
And we saw what happened.
Yeah.
When they needed him most, he just couldn't get it done. He wasn't polished enough as a passer. Can Ty Simpson do that? You had Kalen DeBoer last year coaching him, and Ty Simpson was on that roster, and they still chose Jalen Milroe week in and week out. So
I also feel like there's part of it like you can't like take out the established starter like that unless it's like absolutely necessary.
Right.
I feel like there's a hierarchy in like, your first year coach. If Nick Saban had done, nobody would question him. I mean, Nick Saban pulled Jalen Hurts in the middle of a national championship game, put Tua in there. But I feel like as a first year coach at Alabama, it's a little bit tougher to do that. You have to
I didn't think about that. That's a good point. But you just think about it, like you lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, people started calling for your job when you lost to Vanderbilt. You go in and you beat Georgia. You almost blow that game against Georgia. You lose to Tennessee. I mean, that's just it's not what we were used to. And like Jalen Milroe never took that step as a passer that we thought he could. I mean, obviously he was an excellent runner and he had some phenomenal runs throughout the season. But if Ty Simpson can throw the football, they're going to be fine. Ryan Williams is phenomenal, as we like to joke. Isaiah Horton coming over from Miami is 6'4". I mean, we're going to find out what he can do. You want to help out a first-year starting quarterback? Get some big targets.
Yeah. And Ryan Williams is a great wide receiver, but he is also not a big target. He'll get a lot of catches this year.
It's because he's so young. He hasn't finished growing.
Exactly. He's still got a growth spurt coming. You have one more contender, and I have this team listed as a sleeper.
Yeah, this is my Indiana this year. This is my team that I think a lot of people are going to put them in the middle of the pack, and I am so high on the quarterback that's coming from not one of those flashy places. And John Mateer, last year it was Curtis Rourke. He's coming out of Ohio. He hadn't played in a while because he tore his ACL, and I just loved watching him play football. And I just knew he was a great quarterback. And when he went to Indiana, and then I got bought in, whatever. This is my Indiana this year. Oklahoma had a great defense last year, but they were on the field the entire game because the offense was trash, absolute hot Chinese water trash, garbage. However, to fix that, they lose their quarterback. They say Jackson Arnold, kick rocks. John Mateer, come to Papa. They went and got his offensive coordinator. John Mateer followed. And then, out of nowhere in the middle of the night, Jaden Knott, one of the best running backs in the ACC, out of Cal, comes over. That's great. That's great to hear. Now, the biggest question mark still is that wide receiver core. What is that wide receiver core going to do? I like the tight end Will Huggins. He's a transfer from Kansas. But what is the wide receiver core going to do? Are they going to be able to help John Mateer? Because, yes, I think John Mateer is a phenomenal quarterback, but you're not throwing against, any Tom Dem, Dick, and Sally that plays in the Pac-2, right? You're playing in the SEC now. So he's going to have to be able to take a step forward. And the best way to take a step forward is to have receivers that can get themselves open. I'm a little worried about that, but I think they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, so I have them as a sleeper because I don't think they can quite contend for the SEC. This schedule is brutal, but they're listed at 6.5 wins. I feel confident that they're going to blow past 6.5 wins. But when you
I
look
think they win 9. I think they win 9, Jake.
that, this schedule is rough. When you talk about they play Michigan at home, they also have Texas at South Carolina, Ole Miss, who I'm not as high on still, at Tennessee, who obviously doesn't have Nico, but it's November 1st, so whoever's quarterback should be established, and it might be Joey Aguilar. At Alabama, Missouri, who is also breaking in a bunch of new players, and then LSU to end the year. I mean, they don't really get any of the weak SEC programs.
You think coming in.
We think, but you don't get Kentucky. You don't get Mississippi State. You don't get Arkansas. You don't get the programs that you walk into the year and go, yeah, like that team's not making a bowl game.
All right. So I've got them beating Illinois State, obviously. I've got them beating Michigan. I've got them losing to Temple. I got you.
Yes, absolutely. Hashtag Temple talk.
So beating Temple, beating Auburn, beating Kent State. They're 5-0 coming into Texas. That game is going to be phenomenal. All right. You leave Texas. We're going to talk about it later. I'm not sold on South Carolina. I think South Carolina is going to do a complete 180. I think their offense is going to take a slight step forward, but their defense is going to take a big step back. Their defense was a top 15 defense last year. They're not going to have that. I put it out there, and they said, well, what happened to the defense that held Clemson to points the last few years? They're in the NFL. That's what happened to them. All of them went to the NFL. That almost the entire defensive line went to the NFL except for Dylan Stewart, who's phenomenal.
Who's really, really good. And may or may not be doing some weird celebrations that ESPN likes to promote. And then also
Dylan Stewart is the John Morant of college football.
Goodness. What a comparison. Probably a little bit different, but okay.
Is it?
Maybe.
John Morant's throwing grenades now, though. Even though he said, I am talking to the haters, listening to the haters, and just throwing out their words. I'm like, that is not what you're doing. You are throwing frag grenades. Anyway, I think they beat South Carolina. So now they're 6. They might be 6-1, maybe 7-0. Ole Miss will piss down their leg. They always do in big games. I'm not sold on Tennessee. Alabama's going to be a big game. Missouri and then LSU, I'll talk about this later. They've lost their entire offensive line. What are they going to be? What are they going to be on the offensive line? What are they going to be on the most important part of an offense, especially in the SEC when you have to block against these big behind defensive lines? I think Oklahoma's going to be a 10-2 team.
That's bold. I think Oklahoma wins 8 games for sure. I think they beat Missouri. I think they win the first 5. Michigan could be iffy, but since it's at home, I like their chances. I think they beat Ole Miss, and I think they beat either LSU or Tennessee. Or South Carolina. I think their losses are Texas. I think they lose to Alabama. And then I think they just lose 2 of their other SEC games in here. I think you could pick and choose. LSU, who I think they should still beat. I could be convinced of 9 wins. I think I just talked myself into 9 wins. Right. But I still think 6.5 is like incredibly low. They are not a fan. The books are not a fan of their schedule.
I'm glad. Put the money on them. Jake, you know what they ranked in total defense last year?
What?
19th. That's with a terrible offense putting them in
terrible
but
Billy
positions.
Bowman's gone.
And so is who is their middle linebacker? Danny Stutzman. Okay. Listen, Brent Venables is addicted to finding extremely athletic, extremely tough white linebackers. He's going to do it again. Don't worry.
So let's move into our pretenders. Let's move into
what you bet? You go lead off this time.
So I'm starting with LSU. I think this feels like a 2024 Florida State, but not as much of a dumpster fire as 2024 Florida State. I don't think LSU is a 2-win team, but I do not think that they are contending for the SEC. The books have them at 8.5 wins this year. There is a full rebuild going on within that program, with the exception of quarterback. We all know what Garrett Nussmeier is, and he's already been anointed a first-round pick, and I'm just not fully sold on that yet. I'm not fully sold that he is all of a sudden going to be, a top 10 pick.
Well, think about this too. Coming into last year, Quinn Ewers was probably the favorite to go number 1 overall.
Yeah, he went 7th.
Where did he go in the draft?
Yeah. Almost went undrafted. They have to rebuild the whole offensive line. They've only got one returning starter at center. Their defense ranked 50th or worse in scoring defense, passing defense, and rushing defense. Now, I know they brought in Banks from Missouri, and he helped improve the defense a little bit, but I'm not sold that this program is ready to take that step forward yet. I'm also not sold that Brian Kelly is able to win an SEC championship. I'm just not sold that he is the guy to build that culture. They brought in 18 transfers. That's a lot of transfers for a team that's trying to compete. You see that programs that compete at the highest level, they usually bring in anywhere from like 5 to 10 transfers at the most. Like that's still a lot. Unless you're a first-year team.
Yeah, and put it in perspective, Ohio State brought in 7 guys last year and won the national championship.
Yeah. So when you look at that, when you're bringing in 18, we talked about it last year with Ole Miss and Florida State, how they both brought in a ton of guys. Ole Miss played pretty well, but they also pissed down their leg a little bit. Florida State was absolutely terrible. Florida State should have actually lost another game. They probably should have lost to Cal. They didn't.
Yeah, that was a fluke.
And Florida State was absolutely terrible. So I'm not fully sold when teams are bringing in 20-ish transfers or more. I know this is 18.
Jake, that's your roster. That's your starting roster essentially.
18 guys. You're talking about potentially a whole new defense, like in here,
right?
A whole new offensive line. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in practices, and when these guys, might not even be coming until the summertime, and you only get fall camp. There's a reason why a lot of freshmen who show up in summertime don't play when it comes to fall. Now, granted, a lot of times they've got to get bigger, they've got to learn the system. But transfers, they got to learn the system. They got to learn. They got to learn everything. They have to learn their teammates. They got to learn tendencies. It's not just like stepping in and all of a sudden, like a kicker. Like if you brought in a transfer kicker, you could bring him in whenever they want. Texas Tech brought in a guy who made a kick at a halftime show once and had him kick extra points because they couldn't. Because you know what? All the kicker has to do is one thing: kick the ball. It's not like you're bringing in a defensive back who has to learn the zones and the schemes. When you're kicking an extra point,
and the calls,
out there, when you're going out, you kick the extra point. All you do is learn the holder's cadence, and you go, okay,
we're good to go.
Good.
Let's go, baby.
Good to go. Let's go.
Yeah, I can. You can sell me on LSU being a pretender. I like the pickup of Barian Brown. I like the pickup of Nick Anderson. I think those are two phenomenal wide receivers. But like you're saying, that wasn't the question. The question was never the wide receiver room. The question was never the quarterback. The question is the offensive line. The question was the defense. So what did you do to fix the defense? What did you do to fix the offensive line? You brought in 2 transfers for the offensive line.
Yeah. We'll see how it works this year, but I'm not sold on LSU.
Yeah. I think my first one is Tennessee. And at first, I wanted to be pro Tennessee. I liked how they handled the whole Nico situation. Not that I'm anti Nico, but I am pro how Tennessee handled it. I thought it was, hey, we're not going to be extorted. We got to do this, this, and this. They did nothing bad to say. That's just not for us. See ya. However, the more I think about it, the offensive line last year was terrible. They lost Dylan Sampson, which helped the offensive line, who was also terrible.
They lost a bunch of wide receivers, too.
You lost some wide receivers. I like Mike Matthews. I think he's going to be fine. You lose Nico Iamaleava. Regardless of what you think about him, he was consistently there. He's been there, done that. He's played in these tough environments. He's won games in tough environments. You lose him. The defense, you lose James Pierce Jr., whatever you feel about him, he's gone. So they didn't, and it's not like they went in the portal and got some guys to help out this wide receiver core. They didn't. So I think Tennessee takes a huge step back. I think they're a 7-win team this year. I think they go back to mediocrity.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Matthews, he was highly rated. He didn't have a great first season. He actually entered the portal for a second and then came back. Chris Brazzell, Braylon Stanley, Amari Jefferson, those are the guys that they're looking at probably playing. But, they had guys like Squirrel White and Brew McCoy that had lots of experience, a lot of playing time. Both of them are gone. So you have a new quarterback, probably, almost certainly. It's probably going to be Joey Aguilar, unless they decide to go with Jake Merklinger. But I think Joey Aguilar.
No, I think they're going with Merklinger. That's what I've been hearing is that Merklinger's guy. And some people are even saying that it's not even going to be either one of those two. It's going to be McIntyre.
That would be
And
shocking, putting a true freshman out there when you've got a fifth-year senior at quarterback.
right,
I think they run Aguilar out there for the first snap.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know who
just for the optics.
They play Syracuse the first game, so I think you almost need a guy who
Can run.
play. You need a guy that can play, and somebody's got experience. Merklinger didn't really play much last year. McIntyre hasn't played at all. Unless one of those two really blow it out, I think the first game they go with Aguilar just because you need a guy who's ready for the lights, and Aguilar's played a bunch of games.
Yeah.
But, he's going to have to spend a lot of summer working with his wide receivers because wait until fall camp's probably not the best idea. But he can't even be on campus till June because UCLA, till they're done with classes.
Yeah.
And then, so our other pretender, we both have Auburn here. And I think we both agree on why Auburn is here.
I don't think we do.
Well, so I think Auburn is here because Hugh Freeze hasn't showed us anything. Showed us anything at Auburn. Jackson Arnold, Peyton Thorne. I mean, I like bringing in Eric Singleton. I think Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton are going to make a really good duo. I don't trust Auburn. I don't trust them to win 8 games. I don't trust them to even make a bowl game.
Yeah, and my biggest qualm with them is you got Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold doesn't move the needle for me. So I see you get before we started the show, Jake brought up that I don't think there's much of a difference between Peyton Thorne and Jackson Arnold. And
I think Jackson Arnold is better than Peyton Thorne, but I don't think it's heads and shoulders better. I would take even last year, I probably would have taken Jackson Arnold over Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne is not good. How he didn't get drafted over Graham Mertz confuses me, though.
Listen,
I will say that.
What was the best part of Jackson Arnold's game last year?
His mobility.
He ran for 444 yards. Peyton Thorne's best rushing season was 2023 Auburn. He ran for 515.
Yeah, but Jackson Arnold didn't start every game last year.
That is true. You're right. That's true. Also, with passing, 2024, Peyton Thorne, who is regarded as terrible, even by his own head coach, over and over and over again, threw for 2,700 yards, almost 3,000 yards. Jackson Arnold threw for 1,400.
Like you said, don't get me wrong. That's bad. That was overall bad.
And I would argue that I think Oklahoma. Well, I like Cam Coleman. I don't know. I think they're very similar. I think they're very, very similar. Jackson Arnold is more athletic, but I don't like. This doesn't move the needle for me. For Auburn, like you went and got that, and you get Deuce Knight. You get Deuce Knight to finally commit to you, the true freshman quarterback. But you're not rolling him out in the SEC. You're not doing that yet. Maybe he goes in there and flashes and looks great. I think Jackson Arnold's going to be the guy. I'm not sold on Jackson Arnold, and that's why I have Auburn as my pretender.
I think Jackson Arnold is better than Peyton Thorne. I think that's a little bit disrespectful.
We need to put a poll out there.
I will put a poll out there because I am curious on this one. All right, sleepers. I already went through one of mine, Oklahoma. The second one I have here, you have them. I know later. Well, you had them as a.
I was going to put them as a pretender. I ended up taking them off.
I have South Carolina here. South Carolina's listed at 7.5 wins, and the main reason I have them is because they avoid Georgia and Texas. So you avoid the 2 of the 3 big teams, really, and you get Alabama and Oklahoma at home. 2 other teams that has been talked about as contenders and sleepers. The really only other tough game is LSU on the road, who we've said is a possible pretender. So I think this schedule.
Well, hold on. They have one more really, really tough game in the.
I'm talking about in conference. Because I do think that they lose. I do think that they do lose to Clemson at the end of the year, but it's just because I think Clemson's going to be that much better. But overall, Virginia Tech, that's a crapshoot. I think they'll probably win that game. Wyatt is also in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know why. Stop playing these neutral site games. Play it in South Carolina or play it in Lane Stadium. So we can have Enter Sandman. South Carolina State, they'll win that. Vanderbilt, it's at home, so I tend to like them. Missouri, I'm not super sold on. I think Missouri is going to take a pretty big step back. Kentucky is going to be terrible. Kentucky's not good. LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss. That's your stretch there where you got to where if they can come out 2-2 there, I think that all of a sudden they're looking at 8 to 9 wins.
Yeah, they get Oklahoma at home. They get Alabama at home. There's a new rivalry budding between South Carolina and Ole Miss. I mean, Lane Kiffin's making jabs at Shane Beamer. Juice Wells, who went to Ole Miss, left South Carolina, went to Ole Miss, ended up being, I don't even think he got drafted, and he was projected to be a first-round guy when he transferred. So, not sure who won that trade.
Did he go pro?
Yeah, he went pro.
I don't remember hearing his name when they.
No, I think he went undrafted, is what I said.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't remember them talking about him.
Undrafted free agent, yeah. He signed with the New York Giants.
Huh. Yeah.
So, he only
had 28 catches last year.
Yeah, he was bad. He was really bad. I mean, he really shot himself in the foot, shot his career in the foot by doing what he did to South Carolina. But, let you finish your point. Sorry.
I think that South Carolina, just because of that schedule, they could push to be a potential sleeper. If they knock off one of the two of Oklahoma or Alabama, they could sneak their way towards the top of that, especially if you get into a situation where a bunch of teams have 2 losses in conference and are weird tiebreakers. Wouldn't shock me if they find their way in the SEC championship game.
See, but my biggest issue with South Carolina is this. Like I said earlier, I'm not sold on the defense. They lost everybody. You keep Dylan Stewart, who is a somebody, so I don't want to get it twisted. But you don't go get a transfer wide receiver. They didn't have a wide receiver that had more than 400 yards last year. Why do you not do that? Another big question mark is Rashul Faison, who is supposed to be their running back coming out of Utah State, is now in limbo with the NCAA, and the NCAA is refusing to give an answer on his eligibility. They had to understand that he was going to be eligible, and the NCAA said, we don't think so, not so fast. Do not let this guy step on your field. So now South Carolina only has 4 running backs on the depth chart. So maybe it's 5. It's like they don't have, and they didn't go get a.
They were with like 2 last year, and they did fine.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, they have Oscar Attaway, who was a guy last year, and I like Jawan Howell, who is listed as a 3rd guy, but I liked the way he played last year. You got Lenore Sellers coming back. That's a huge bright spot, and you have Michael Smith at tight end, who I think is going to take a big step forward, but that wide receiver core doesn't do it for me. Jared Brown is okay. Nick Harbor is Nick Harbor. He is really fast. He's very athletic. He does not have consistent hands. I like Mazio Bennett. I'll give you that. I like Mazio Bennett.
Feels like we were waiting for Nick Harbor to break out for ever at this point.
He breaks out when you play against him in NCAA.
Yeah, because he's probably a freak in that game.
Yeah, their entire defensive line is replaced by. I mean, their entire defense line has been replaced by transfers. I mean, this is unbelievable to me.
I'll let you go into your sleepers now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting fired up. My sleepers are Florida. I like Florida. I don't think a lot of people are sleeping on them. I'm kind of sleeping on them, so this is kind of like a reverse meaning of what sleepers are for us. But I think Florida takes that next step. I think Billy Napier is able to be able to save his job, and I think it's all because of DJ Lagway. My biggest question with DJ Lagway is, can he stay healthy? Because the biggest part of his game is his running ability. If he cannot run and he keeps getting hurt, what are they going to do? Who's behind him? They don't have anybody to come in from behind, and that's another one you can put on a quote. They don't have anybody who can come in from behind. And with the tough schedule that they have, like that gauntlet is going to be very, very difficult. So I think they do take that next step. I do think they're an 8-win team. I thought they were going to be an 8-win team last year, and they just couldn't get out of their own way. Then also Missouri. Missouri is my other sleeper. And this one might be a hotter take, but they had the 17th ranked defense last year, Jake, and they were turning the 5th most production on the defensive side of the ball in the country. That's good. You lose some wide receivers, but they've been able to go get some guys, and then you get Bo Pribula at quarterback out of Penn State. I have high hopes for Bo Pribula. I think he's a really good athlete. I think he's got a decent arm. I like the way he looked in the Wisconsin game when he played for Penn State, some meaningful snaps. So I think Missouri can get over that 7.5. I think they get 8 wins. I think they can go over on that 7.5 point spread that FanDuel has them at.
Yeah, I'm just not in on Missouri right now. I know they bring in Pribula, and maybe he will be the answer. I mean, they had Brady Cook there for a couple of years, and Cook played pretty well in 2023. Took a pretty big step back in 2024. The whole offense kind of took a big step back.
It really
Even
did.
Guys like Luther Burden and Mookie Cooper. They had. I think that Theo Weiss was still there as well.
He was.
They had a ton of guys. They lost Cody Schrader, which seemed like that was the whole offense. When he was gone, all of a sudden they couldn't do anything.
Right.
And do they need a strong running game again? But the thing is, Pribula can move the ball with his legs. He's going to be more of a mobile quarterback. He's not going to be stuck in the pocket.
Yeah, Brady Cook looked like a retired bartender.
He's probably bartending this fall. If he goes to Columbia, he might get some free drinks. Dumpster fires. This is my favorite part, to go through dumpster fires.
We share one.
First off, I have Arkansas. I don't know how Sam Pittman is still employed at this point. How is he still have a job? Arkansas has been terrible. I feel like the only reason he was kept around is because he beat Tennessee last year.
I think he was kept around, and maybe this is a hot take, but I think he was kept around because they couldn't get the guy they wanted this year.
I could see that. Arkansas is not an easy place to win. They've kind of run through some coaches lately. I mean, granted, Arkansas went 7-6. They made a bowl game. Okay, that's great. But overall, like if they don't beat Tennessee, there's really not a big win on their schedule. It's Arkansas, Pine Bluff, UAB, Auburn, Mississippi State, Louisiana Tech.
Right.
So, and then they beat Texas Tech in the bowl game. They were 6-6. If they lose to Tennessee, they're 5-7 with losses to Oklahoma State, who was absolutely terrible, who was ranked at the time though. Texas A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, and Missouri. Granted, all those teams were really good and all ranked in the top 25.
And they absolutely blew it against Oklahoma State. I think they were up 21 in that game.
Yeah, they did. They did. And so this year's schedule, I don't see it happening. You got Ole Miss. Memphis on the road, I think, could be tricky. Memphis just seems to be a pretty solid team year in, year out. You have Notre Dame in your non-conference schedule this year. Notre Dame is going to wax them. Granted, it's in Arkansas, but Notre Dame is going to absolutely wax them. You get at Tennessee, A&M. They should beat Auburn. They should beat Mississippi State. And then will probably lose the last 3 with LSU, Texas, and Missouri. There's a really good chance that they're not going to make a bowl game this year. And I just don't see a way. Taylor Green's fine, but he's so inconsistent. He's so inconsistent. And
another one, can he stay healthy?
Can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, great. His consistency, though, some games he was throwing, 65% completion. Other games he was like 47% completion.
Yeah.
He runs the ball decently, but he's got to have better decision making. Malachi Singleton's not there as a backup. Who's the one who actually beat Tennessee last year?
Right, you're right. He came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, because Taylor Green got hurt.
Yeah,
but Malachi Singleton led them down the field to go with the go-ahead touchdown. So Taylor Green wasn't even on the field when that happened. So it's hard to rely on him week in and week out to be able to actually make a bowl game, especially in some of these big games. Then the other ones are joint one, Mississippi State. This is just a mess all around. There's not much good to say about it. The defense was absolutely terrible. It was one of the worst in the country last year. Blake Shapen was fine. They split between Blake Shapen and somebody else. I forget who the other quarterback. Michael Van Buren. Yeah. Quarterback play was not good. There wasn't much good.
Go? Didn't he transfer?
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't.
I don't. It's like I'll look it up. I have no idea where he ended up. Is he still technically? He's at LSU. Why? You're not going to play. Michael Van Buren went 1-7 as a starter last year. Nice.
Yeah, there's, like you said, there's nothing really to say about Mississippi State. They stink. They didn't do anything to get better. I'm not
sold on Blake Shapen. Defense is still going to be bad.
Sorry,
There's
Jeff
not
Levy.
much. Yeah, Jeff Levy, I think, is a good offensive mind, but there's not much there to work with.
How many guys do you think are started with Mississippi State that are projected starters? So out of the 11, how many of those do you think are not transfers, have never transferred?
On the offense or defense side of the ball?
On the offense.
Like guys who were not there last year that are
No. Who's the only one who has never transferred? So he did not transfer into Mississippi State, and he has not transferred out of Mississippi State.
Oh, I have no idea.
One person. That would be the right tackle, the redshirt senior, Albert Reese IV.
He must really love being a Mississippi State Bulldog.
Devon Booth, graduate transfer. Blake Shapen, graduate transfer. Sadoa Traore, the tight end, senior transfer. Trevor Mayberry, a redshirt senior transfer. Kobe Keenum, redshirt sophomore transfer. Jacoby Jackson, redshirt senior transfer. Jesse Ramil, redshirt senior transfer. Brennan Thompson, senior transfer. Aiden Williams, junior transfer. Marcus Allen, redshirt senior transfer. They're going to have the oldest team on the freaking planet, though.
And they're going to go 3-9 this year.
Yeah, so not looking good for Mississippi State. My other dumpster fire is Kentucky. I mean, like we already talked about it. There seems to be some buzz around the quarterback. I'm forgetting his name. Caldaza. Is it Zach?
Zach Calzada? Yeah, because he's bounced around a ton.
He's got some buzz coming from spring ball, but similar to Mississippi State. There's one person who's never transferred. No, two people on Kentucky's offense who have never transferred. They've always been Kentucky guys. That would be their tight end, Josh Caddis. And maybe it is
center, Yeager Burton.
You're right. It's the center, Yeager Burton, the redshirt senior, which is hell of a name, Yeager. So what do you expect out of them? I mean, I don't know. I don't have high hopes for Kentucky. I think Mark Stoops' days are numbered. The problem is Kentucky is probably one of the best jobs in the SEC because what are the expectations? You get an SEC paycheck and you can go 7-5, 6-6, 4-8 like you did last year, and still be coaching.
Yeah, I mean, people say Mark Stoops' days are numbered. He's 67-73,
which is not bad for Kentucky.
It says he's 77-73 overall, but I don't know when else he was a head coach. Anyways,
wasn't he a head coach?
No, that's his brother, Mike.
Yeah, but I think Mark Stoops was a. No, you're right. He left as the defense coordinator in Oklahoma to go be the head coach at Kentucky, correct?
No, he actually never coached with his brother, at least at Oklahoma. He was at Florida State prior, Arizona before that, Miami as a defensive back coach, 01 to 03. So he's made 7 bowl games in his last 8 years. The only one he missed was last year. I just have a hard time thinking, why would you fire Mark Stoops? How much better of a coach are you going to get?
Right, that's my point. Kentucky is fine with what he can do.
You just need to understand that you might go through a little bit of a lull, but Mark Stoops is probably going to figure it out in a year or two and get back up to 7 or 8 wins. You just are going to have to understand that, yeah, you might win 4 games last year and you might win 4 or 5 games this year, but what are you going to do? Go find somebody else? Go find somebody else that wants to be the Kentucky head coach. It's like Vanderbilt trying to find a head coach, Arkansas trying to find a head coach. You found a coach that can consistently take you to bowl games. I don't want to say that, hey, it's impossible to get any better, but he took you to 10 wins in 2021.
Right.
If this had been the year of, the 12-team playoff, you wouldn't have made it, but you would have probably been in consideration.
Right. Yeah.
So anything else you want to add about the SEC?
No.
Well, we went long today, so we'll save our wide receiver rankings for next week. I have them written down, so we'll save them for next week.
Yeah, I'm undefeated so far. I haven't lost one of these rankings, by the way.
Have not. Undefeated. Just like the SEC, undefeated in hypothetical matchups.
So, all right, quick fastball before we go. Who's your favorite to win each Power 4 conference?
Who's my favorite to win each Power 4 conference?
Yeah, I'll give you a second to think about it while I go over mine.
Okay.
Clemson, Penn State, Arizona State, Georgia.
I was like,
Texas.
I mean, it's hard to not say Ohio State for the Big Ten because reigning national champs. I know what Penn State has, but I'm going to say Ohio State is my favorite to win. Big 12 is an absolute crapshoot over there. I want to say Arizona State. That's not going to be the right answer, though, because whenever time comes, that's not going to be who wins it.
I agree.
But we'll say Arizona State for the sake of the discussion here. ACC's Clemson. That one's a pretty easy one. SEC, I'm going with Georgia. You took Texas. I'm going to go with Georgia here because I think it's hard to bet against them until they don't win it. And they've been pretty darn good at winning it the last couple of years.
Yeah. So I'm confident in those picks. You heard it here first. We're undefeated in predicting preseason projected conference champions.
Now, if you really want full in-depth conference previews, we'll be starting those here in the summertime.
Right.
We'll start digging into everybody rather than just high level. We'll dig into a lot of these teams and break it down to smaller episodes. So that way we have more time to talk about each team and what everybody brings in, what everybody's doing, coaching changes, players, portal. We'll really have time to dive into that and break it down in by a couple teams at a time rather than large, high level stuff. But really appreciate everybody joining us here this week. We'll be back again next week. We've got plenty of more stuff to keep us going. Once we start getting into here to the summer times, we'll start getting into previews. And I cannot wait to start previewing some college football this summer.
I know. I'm so hyped. We're almost there. The weather's hot. It's already like 900 degrees in South Carolina, so football can't get here any faster.
Can't get here any faster. Cannot wait. We're just over 100 days to the start of the season. I saw we were just past the equinox of the middle point. From the end of the season to the beginning of the season, we are over the equinox. So
that's right. Hang in there, guys. We can do it.
We'll be there soon. With that being said, make sure to follow us on social media. Walk-On Redshirts on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your college football content. And we'll be back again next week.